Hi, Hayden here, and this video is going to be actually an answer to a question, and then another part of the video is going to talk about changing the chainsaw blade, right? So here it is. I pick up this, it's Power Care. Again, nobody's compensating me for this, but I'll definitely gladly accept such compensation if somebody wants to offer that. But it's a Power Care thing. I just pick it up at Home Depot. It has 2 chains, and the cost is fair. You know, it's not the lowest price in the world, but you know what? Gets the job done, and a new blade cuts like a hot knife through butter kind of thing. And this is a 2-blade pack. This is the most economical way I can see of to quickly and easily acquire new blades. And I just buy its chains. When I say blades, I'm referring to the chain itself, okay, that's in there. And it's kind of a hoot to unfurl this thing and get it on the chainsaw. I'll talk about that in a minute. The first thing is the answer to a question of, what do I do to clean the chainsaw? And the chainsaw is on the ground next to a bucket of soapy water. So let's get into that. This is what I do. It's not necessarily the recommended way to do this, by the way. So check with the book and everything else. But for me, this is the way I do it, because this is the way it works out easiest for me. All right, so let's go ahead and get down here. And we got our chainsaw. Now, the first thing I did was I basically rinsed the whole thing off, just blew it off with water from the garden hose back here, and I got that done. And then I took one of my old kitty litter buckets here, filled that up with water, put some soap in it, and now I have a brush that's meant to wash like the tire. You know, you weren't going to wash the wheel of your car kind of thing, and it has a removable handle, which is nice for me. So I get to remove the handle, and then I basically go ahead and wash it off. You don't really want to soak this thing down, but it's a chainsaw. I mean, the thing's meant to be outside doing work, right? So just wash the thing off, you know, the best I can, and then I'll dry it off, and I'll come back and make sure that I have it all dried out and everything else, and then I'll come back and I will show you the process I do of changing out the chain on this thing. But basically that's it. I just take a nice soft rag. I don't go to these inlet holes very much, but because that's where the electronics are inside, and I don't really want to soak those down very much at all, really. And basically I just wash the dirt off, and then just with my soft, thing, using my soapy water. And that's just dish detergent, by the way. Dish detergent. And I saw I had a Honda Civic. I remember when I first moved in this property, my wife and I, misdemeanor, we moved up here from South Florida to Central Florida. We towed our car up there with us, behind one of the U-Hauls, and the Honda Civic owner's manual said just use dish detergent. You want to wash your car, just use dish detergent. And I thought that was like one of the best things I ever saw, where Honda and the Civic for that year of mine, they didn't like kind of sell out to some manufacturer or something like that and do an advertising for XYZ car wash or whatever. They said just use dish detergent. It's good enough for your dishes, it's good enough for your car. So anyway, so I'm going to finish washing this up. Then I'm going to come back up to the table, and we will go ahead and change out the chain on this chainsaw. I'll show you how I do that. All right, so stay tuned. I'll catch you in a minute. Okay, so we've gone through, and I've cleaned off the chainsaw, cleaned it off and dried it up pretty much as best I could. I'm still going to be dripping a little bit because the parts of it are still damp, but I can't get this little towel in every little nook and cranny, nor do I want to, because there's also oil based in this thing. There's oil reservoir right here. It's got some oil in it. I need to fill it back up. That's lubrication for the chain. Of course, most everybody knows that, but for anybody who might not, there's a cap right here that I have to loosen up. And I may have to use a tool to help me get that thing loose, or put my gloves on or something. But anyways, it's a pretty good cap, easy enough to manipulate to get the oil in there. I use a funnel. I have a small funnel that I use. That's the only thing I use that funnel for, is just to put lube oil for the chain oil, chain and bar oil actually. The chain is on the outside of the bar. This thing here where it says Ryobi, that's the bar. When I picked up this item, I know that I'm going to damage the bar and chains. It's just going to happen because I'm not gentle on materials. So I went ahead and bought an extra bar and several extra chains, and one of those is what I'm going to change now. The bottom of the tool has a receptacle here for a wrench that they supply with it. Just kind of slides right in there, snaps in real tight too, by the way, and it's hard to get out. Now this tool is great if you have it for an emergency kind of thing. it's also difficult to get out of there. So unless you have like a multi-tool or something like that to help get this thing out of here, it's a pain in the neck. So what I normally do is when I'm out in the field somewhere away from the garage here, I take a socket and a ratchet and a regular flathead screwdriver to help me get this thing on and off if I need to make a change out there in the field. Or worse, if something happens and the chain, because it stretches, the chain will stretch, every one of these little dots right here along the side here are a connection point between the one link and the next link next to it. And every one of those, just like a bicycle chain when you're a kid, the bicycle chain is like loose. And how did it get loose? It's because as you break in a chain, it kind of stretches a bit, metal fatigue and all that. We might be familiar with that term. But metal fatigue and the stretching and everything that happens, and the chain's only good for so long. It's only going to do so much work for me here before the chain needs to be sharpened. Now, I know how to sharpen the blades, the chain, I know how to do it and everything else. I've done it before. It works pretty good, but it takes time. And the amount of time that it takes, frankly, is too much time. Unless it's a long rainy session of days of rain and nothing but rain, or something else that I can't be doing on the property that day, it's not worth it. It's just an incredible time suck to sharpen this thing up. Even if you have the right tools and everything else, I mean the double file and everything else, and you're doing all that kind of stuff, that's fine. And also to take the chain somewhere and have it professionally sharpened costs a certain amount of money. Plus, it's going to cost me time to go there, pick up the chain, or drop the chain off, come back to the house here, go back, pick up the chain, pay for it and everything else. By the time I've done all that, in all honesty, to me, it's worth it just to buy a bunch of chains, just go through them. If you have the time and energy to just go ahead and just bang these things out, sharpen it up. It doesn't take long to sharpen these, by the way. It really doesn't take all that long. It's just such a pain in the neck. And if you don't get them all right, then what'll happen is the blade will start to curve one way or the other. While you're making a cut, it'll kind of go one way or the other because all the teeth aren't as sharp. So the sharper teeth are doing a cut and the duller ones are doing a pull. Whichever way it's working, it's going to pull it one way or the other, which doesn't make a nice straight cut. So you don't want that. You want nice straight cuts. If you have the wherewithal to go ahead and sharpen them, I do not. So to me, time is money kind of thing like that, and getting the new blades is not, it's more expensive than having them sharpened professionally, but in all honesty, it's not that much more expensive, and it just saves me so much more time just to pick up the most economical package I can do. Maybe I'll look online and see if I can find a more economical package, but that's what I'll do. Now, to take this thing off, I'm going to tilt this screen down here so we can see what's going on the table. So basically, I turn the thing on its side, and normally I straddle this thing, but I don't have the bolts on that tight right now, or the nuts, I should say. I don't have them on that tight, so I can just, they just come loose, right? I did that just for me. But basically, I straddle this, and it's kind of like a breaker bar. I use it against my leg, and I just go ahead and take that off. Now, the other thing, this one here, I put on a little tighter. So let's just go ahead and break that. There we go. All right, cooking with gas. And then you can either use just the handle itself, or you can do it by hand if they're loose enough. Every now and then you might want to just shoot these things with a little bit of greasy oil or something like that, something like even WD-40. Just make sure that the posts are clean. That's a good idea. Now I've rinsed them all off and everything else, but it's probably good to wipe them off too. And what I'm trying to do here is just make sure there's no dirt or grit or anything on the posts themselves, and make sure they're clean. So I got a little bit of dirt off of there, so that's good. Because you don't want the grit in there. It'll kind of hurt the tool over time. Now the other thing I want to do is right here, there's a screw. This is to tighten the chain on the bar. Basically, it pushes the bar out or it pulls it back, and I'll show you that in a second. And basically I just loosen this up a little bit so that it's easier to get this cover plate off. Because as you've stretched out the chain and you've tightened up the bar and everything else, you need to back off that tension a little bit, and it makes this piece here easier to remove. And you just want to get it straight off, so it's nice and nice and cleanly off. And then you just pick up the bar and then just let it slide. Now let me point out these things here. There's 2 holes here, right? And it says the adjusting block. That's what that says right here where I'm pointing. It says adjusting block, and it's pointing to this hole. There's another hole over here because this bar is not, it doesn't need to be mounted a specific way. The bar itself, the chain needs to be a very specific way, and they have a little diagram right here to have it to where the teeth look like this, which they do, okay? And then it also tells you which one to use. here as well. The 52, and that's what I have right here. This is the Y52, you know, chain, and it says you use the 52 right here, and the 3/8 and all that. And so I got the right chain, and so I can work with it that way. And it's a 14-inch bar. So the bar is the 14 inches that they're talking about there. And basically I just lift up on the chain, on the bar, and I pull this off like that. All right, let's just tilt this up a little bit so maybe I can get a little further away from the camera. What I do basically is I just pick up on the top. Just be careful because these teeth are still sharp even though they've been used and they're dull a little bit. The chain will kind of fall free a little bit, so I get my hand up in there, so I hold the bar and I lift up on the chain and I just remove the bar. Okay, now this thing's pretty sharp, so basically I'm just gonna, you know, still, even though it's not sharp enough for me to get any cutting done effectively and efficiently, and I just ball it back up. Then I save these things here to help me manage these things so that I don't have a bunch of sharp chains sitting around. And then basically when I take both the chains out, and this is a new chain here, I'll basically just put the old chain back in it. But I usually make sure I remove both the chains before I start putting the old one back in, right? So this thing here has a nice little box so I can maintain it, and then the metal can be donated and recycled. So metal can be recycled, so that's what we do. Now this thing here is probably going to be some kind of a knot. And there it is. So there's like a double knot going on there. So I got to play around with the chain a little bit to undo that knot. See, so there's the double knot down there. So these things are kind of a hoot to play with. Basically, you just have to lift it up over the knot and it comes loose, all right? Then I take the Ryobi, so it's going to be facing upwards. It doesn't really matter which way you put it on, as long as the teeth are going the right direction, right? And these, I have to actually have the teeth going the wrong direction. I need to turn it around, right? Check my little diagram. But in all honesty, what we need to know is the top of the bar. The blades are going this way along the top, and they're coming back in this way, all right? So as long as you remember that on the top, for this particular chainsaw, I think they're all the same, the chain goes out on top, comes in on the bottom. So knowing that, if we look at the teeth of the chain right here, the cutting part is right there on top, okay? Right there, that's the cutting blade, all right? And so as long, and it's kind of pointing in a certain direction, right? So you see it's pointing that direction. So as long as it's pointing and it's flat on the back, all right? Let me see if I get that in front of my shirt there, right? So it's flat on back, and it's actually got a little point on the front. So it's kind of like it's pointing which way it wants to go, and that's the way we want to do it. We want it pointing the way it wants to go, all right? And there we go. And just place it on, because unfortunately it will go on backwards. You can put it on backwards. I recommend highly that we don't do that. All right, so let's go ahead and put this thing down now. All right, and it fits right on. It just slides right on. If you're lucky, it just goes on real nice and neat. Now the real trick is getting this thing on so everything stays together, right? Because it has to be together. Because if it's not together, it falls loose. And then it comes, you know, it's sitting wrong on the spindle, or it's sitting wrong on the bar. You don't want either one of those. So now the other thing is like, well, how do we keep it tight? How do we adjust the tightness? Well, that's with this screw, right? This thing right here, this little block right here is the tensioning block, okay? So the tensioning block moves. So when I turn this screw, right? Turn the screw. When you're turning the screw here, it's actually not here, it's here. But when I turn this screw here, this bar, this little block here, right, the little pin moves back and forth. So it'll push the bar out to make it tighter, or pull back in to make it loose again. And of course, when we're putting it on, we want to have it at a certain tension, but when we're going to take it off, you got to back it off. So I got to back off the tension so I can lift this thing off at all, okay? It's real important. Because if you're sitting there trying to fight this thing off, you're trying to pry it off or anything, you're doing it wrong. You just need to go ahead and loosen up this screw so that this pin moves back towards the back of the chainsaw, so that you can just basically lift this off. All right. Okay. So now when I put it on, I put it on nice and slow. That's the way to do it. All right. So it's nice and slow, but now I notice it's not completely on. Okay. Now the reason for that is, even though I backed it off, I need to back it off some more. There we go. I think I felt a little something. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Back it off a little bit more. There we go. All right, so he's on. All right. All right, so it's flush. It's all the way down here. This end here is flat. This end is flat. Now what I normally do, is I just put these bolts, the nuts on. The nuts, they're nuts. Nuts and bolts and screws. I get them all mixed up all the time. Basically, I just put them on, and I just put them on not even finger tight, right? Because I want this thing to stay together. I don't want this thing coming off. I don't want the chain getting loose, right? Everybody get loose now. I don't want that happening. So basically, I'm going to tighten up the chain. I just give a little pull, and now that chain is too loose right there, okay? That's too much of that coming off right there, all right? So just give it a little rotation a little bit. Tighten that up a little bit more. That's a little bit better, a little bit better. Okay, I'll put my body in a way. Normally I just straddle this thing with my legs and I tighten it up on the ground. I'm actually just making sure that the chain moves freely and I didn't get anything bound up or anything like that, because that could be a problem later on. All right, that's too tight. Be very careful. Wear gloves or whatever. Be very, very careful manipulating the chain with your hands. All right. This is the way it goes too, by the way. It goes this direction. You know, it goes out on top, in on the bottom. Okay. It's going to give that just a little bit loose. That's a little bit too loose. A little tighter. Good. All right. Now, at this point, and I made a mistake. One time I forgot to do this. It's really important to make sure you tighten those nuts back up, because if you don't, the chain's going to be sitting on there loose in no time, right? So we go ahead and tighten this back up, because you don't want the nuts, you don't want the chain coming loose while you're working, right? And I don't know what the torque, and I'm not using a torque wrench on this, so I don't know how many pounds of pressure I'm putting on it. I just know the feel. You'll get the feel for it. What's the right amount there, all right? And now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a couple of things. I'm gonna do a little bit of lubrication on this thing, and I'm gonna do a little battery test on it. So hang on, I'll be right back with that. I need to pick up a battery. All right, so what are the two tools every mechanic needs, or everybody needs? You need, if you want it to, if it's moving and it shouldn't, you need duct tape. And if it's not moving and it should, you need some WD-40. So that's the kind of joke on there, and probably true. All right, so this one has that straw on it. I have a small can. It has a straw. You got to push it into the top. It's a real pain in the neck. Personally, again, nobody's compensating for me. This is just making a point here, is that this one here has a double spray on it. It has a hole in the top. So when the straw is down, when the little straw applicator is down, then this will spray. It pretty much sprays a straight line. And when you have the straw on it, then you can manipulate exactly where you want this lube to go. Now there's a couple of things I'm going to lubricate here. Mainly, I'm going to lubricate the chain, okay? Because I want the chain to have some lubrication on it. And then, but I'm going to do that off camera. I'm just going to basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray on the chain, and then I'm going to run the chain. Then I'm going to spray it again. Even though it has this oil well and it automatically lubricates, I'm going to go ahead and lubricate the chain on the device. Now there's also a couple of places I want to lubricate here too, and I should have done that already. On the inside there's well, actually not so much on the inside, but on the outside here there's actually a wheel. See this like silver dot right here? That's actually a center wheel for a spinning device right there inside. So it's got like kind of a gear inside, and I want to put some oil on that as well to help things move smoothly as they possibly can. Now the new chain is going to cut like butter, but I want it to be able to be lubricated and good to go before I go. That gives it the best opportunity to get cut and get the job done for me. Again, I'm not going to spray this thing around the camera, the microphone and stuff like that, but I'll do it after the video. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my battery's on there, and I'm going to... All right, so that sounds good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera, lubricate this thing, come back and run it again and see if it sounds a little bit smoother. So hang on. Okay, so we heard the thing running. I just put the chain on. Everything was great and everything else. I was like, the tension, everything's fine. But then I ran the thing just to get the thing turning, sitting in place, see if I need to adjust the tightness on the chain and stuff like that. Then I lubed it up. It sounds good. I don't hear any binding, any grit or dirt or anything in the blade, there better not be any in the blade, but within the bar. And again, the thing where it says Ryobi right here, this is the bar. I'll talk about that in another video, but I just want to make sure everything's nice and clean and clear and all that. Now what I do is I go ahead and I put the cover on there. It has a protective cover that it comes with. I'm going to put that on there, and then I'm going to get everything set and good to go for the day. But this is what I use, the WD-40. That's the initial lube that I put on there, and then the bar lube that is in this container. I'll make sure this is nice and full before I go out in the back field and start cutting up a couple of trees that I need to get rid of, or tree limbs that I need to clean up in the back corner there. And maybe I'll show you, maybe I'll make a little before and after clip so you can see what I did today with this. All right, so that's how I do the change. That's how I clean. I try to keep the dirt off it and everything. That's how I clean the Ryobi, and that is how I change the chain on there. And of course, the logic for why I just buy new chains all the time as opposed to taking time to sharpen them. Time is money. If I'm not working with the chainsaw, if I'm not working on changing blades, sharpening blades and other things, then I could be doing other things, gathering it. Like every time it rains in Florida, things fall out of the trees, old limbs and stuff like that, broken dead limbs that got stuck up in the tree will fall down. I need to clean those up. Working on fencing, working on taking care of the lawn and stuff like that. I have plenty of things to do outside here, and sitting inside the garage, unless it's a rainy day and I got nothing else to do, sharpening blades with a file, with a circular file, is really not my idea of getting jobs done effectively and efficiently. All right, that's going to wrap this one up for here. Don't forget to give me that thumbs up, like this video, drop a comment below, let me know you came by to say hi. If you have any questions or anything, comments, keeping things nice and all that, make those comments below. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel, because I greatly appreciate the growth on the network. Until I see you in the next video, take care and be well.